Welcome back to the Naughty Corner. And this is really just a quick chat to have a catch up, I guess, about the cases that are most capturing our attention, that we're obsessing over. I can't remember what I talked to you about last year, so let's just start with Morphew. And Barry Morphew was released on bail, $500,000 cash, which was paid. He was collected by his daughters and one of his sisters. He looked like he'd aged. I mean, he looked 70, didn't he? Not 54 or whatever he is, but looking very pleased to be out. Girls very pleased, looking to have him back, although I think Mallory looked more stressed and taut and burdened, but who's to say? And not only did Barry get out on bail, we now have the arrest affidavit to drool over and to make a meal of, I guess. And depending on what side of the fence someone has chosen to be on, or just fallen on, or jumped off into, been pushed into, a meal can be made on either side, can't it, for whatever your belief is, if you have a belief. But there are things in there that are just so sickening. Now, we always knew Barry is a hustler, and we've pondered here, did Suzanne just not like the way Barry does biz, although she was pointing out to Barry that upon separation she'll still continue to do his books. Is this so that she can drain funds into her secret bank accounts still? I don't know. Maybe just open-heartedly wanting to help him out because he doesn't pay enough attention to those sort of things himself, possibly. It's so annoying when people will say, wow, she's just a housewife. When she says she raised the two girls on her own, and the girls that people like to blast and abuse and cast shade on the characters of, well, these are the girls that Suzanne proudly raised. She says a lot on her own because Barry was away so much, and that is a contribution. And of course she made other contributions to the marriage and the family, of course she did. Not earning an income though since 1999, other than to receive some inheritances, but helping a husband do the books. I mean, it's often called the unpaid work, isn't it? The work of a wife and mother in the family home, So I think it's ridiculous and cruel and stupid, and just people that they want to abuse, and that's what they come up with. It's just coming from a place of hate. So it's not useful to worry about these things and in the big picture, I don't think. So you've got Barry, who's a hustler, who seems to be ripping people off, left, right, and centre to, provide. But I would just guess that a lot of Barry's income actually came from hunting, and whether he was doing that on the right side of the law or not, I don't know, with regards to collecting antlers, horns, it seems that it wasn't always the case. So he's a hustler, and Suzanne's got her hustle too, okay? Perhaps she was sometimes suspicious about what Barry was doing outside of the marital home, because he's kind of a secretive person, or he's kind of this person that is just very, not machismo, because that's kind of a really, I I think that's a traditional role, protector role, more of a respectful role toward women than, say, being really macho, and just being this sort of, what's the word? So I'm really struggling for words at the moment because I'm still not well. But the anywho, so he would go hunting for days, not tell her maybe when he was coming home. He'd just come and go. Or maybe when she thought Barry was working, he would let Suzanne think he was still at work, but he's down at the gym because he wants to work out. Okay, so secretive in that regard. And has this truly sparked the paranoia that Suzanne felt, or was this coming from something else? Because she was the one having an affair, and because she was struggling mentally and physically, she was ill. Was this why she was thinking that the deer had cameras behind the eyes? I mean, I've thought my cat was a robot. I've thought my cat was watching me, recording information and things like this, right? This is not Autumn, who died last year. This is a long time ago. And, if this is true about Suzanne, it does say something about her frame of mind, and something that I just can't respect in anybody, even though I know I would have been guilty of similar things. It's the way that we manipulate others using things that happen to lie so that we are viewed a certain way. So the perception is that we are good and someone else is bad, or that we're justified in things, or we're trying to give credence to things we want other people to believe that aren't true, things that aren't true. And I just can't respect it. And Suzanne did a lot of this. She would tell her friend, for example, that Barry's chasing her around Mexico, chasing her around, trying to get her phone and making accusations. Well, Suzanne, you were making Barry feel very uncomfortable and suspicious because you're on your phone to your lover in front of him when you're on holiday with your family. And his accusations were actually hitting the mark because he was 100% right to suspect you. He didn't know who you were talking to, that it might be a lover you're sleeping with, but he was suspicious that you were having some sort of emotional relationship that went beyond a friendship outside of the marriage. That's what he was suspicious of. You were blatant about it. You're rubbing his face in it, and then he's trying to find out, and then you're kind of gaslighting him because you know that he's not going to work out this WhatsApp app, right? And he's not going to work out LinkedIn. So he's knowing you're talking. He can see you doing it. You're driving him crazy. He takes your phone. He wants to look at it. And because he doesn't trust you, and of course he can't find it, and you're not telling him, you're not being honest. So, and then you're going to your friends saying, this is what he's done, isn't he horrible? This is so manipulative and underhanded, and it's such an awful thing to do to someone, right? And there's no integrity there at all. And she did it a lot. We know this psychological thing of when you're accusing someone else, it's because you know it's possible because you're doing it yourself. Most likely that's where your suspicions arise. Or was it just, her desire for him maybe just to F off sort of thing, just leave her to it, rather than her just effing off and then being able to get on with her life in any way she chose to, because she's then not betraying a marriage. It's so bizarre, and there's a lot of this in this affidavit. And there's a lot of Suzanne telling everyone she's convinced Barry's having an affair. He's being cruel to her and mean to her, accusing her, but she's having the affair. She's having a sexual and emotional affair with quite... Did she choose Jeff because if Barry knew it would really piss him off? Because Jeff is the boy that she fooled around with once when she was much younger, and Barry went and confronted Libla on the golf course, and instead of the way Libla wormed out of it, right, like the little worm he is, was telling Barry, you're going to lose your job. He didn't say, well, I'm not sorry. It's not Suzanne's fault. I like her. I've always liked her. And you better watch out because I'm going to make a play or whatever. I don't know. He was just all like, oh, I'm sorry. I won't go there again and you're going to lose your job. What a little weasel. What a little weasel. And it comes out that he thought Suzanne was already dead. So, yeah, why come forward? She's dead. Not caring where her body is, what happened to her, that he might have been able to help in some way. What a skunk. Sorry, animals. Sorry, weasels. Sorry, skunks. You know, what a sorry, sad sack of a man. Yeah, he'd better be watching his balls. Maybe that, you know, apart from possibly murdering his wife, we don't know. But a mistake Barry did make, and this brought the arrest forward, I'm sure, is he expressed his desire just to leave Maysville. He was very unhappy there, of course, and he wanted to go back to Indiana, he said. Maybe he was going to go and hunt down a couple of tiny little shriveled man-child balls. Yeah, who knows, Jeff? So, you know, I think maybe that pushed an arrest forward. It was 5 days after that announcement by Barry that he was arrested, I think. So, you know, it's all just a bit of a shit show. I mean, was Suzanne rather paranoid? And is this from some sort of just the stress, you know, this power threat model that we look at? That causes your freeze, your fight, your flight, your fawn, as people like to add in. You know, but if that's true, and I kind of believe it is, she's telling Jeff Libler he's got cameras everywhere, he's watching our every move. But she seemed to like the excitement, did she, or something, the fear, because what was she was getting something more than what appears on the surface out of it, you know, a reprieve from her marriage and this sort of thing, because she was continuing on against, in light of all these other things she was saying to Jeff and to Sheila about being watched and everything. And if it's true what she says, according to Barry, that, you know, she thought he'd put cameras in the eyes of his dear, that's serious. That's something serious going on there. That's beyond thinking your husband is keeping tabs and monitoring you. You know, and these cameras, how long had they been in the safe? I mean, they weren't up around the home. They were locked away in the safe. So it's all... I think there's a lot to unpick psychologically here from all of the characters. I don't think anyone in their right mind could deny that. I mean, what I think... sorry, this is so terrible, isn't it? I can barely think straight. I'm actually just off to the doctor again today. But, yeah, there's a lot to unpick with everybody's psychology, the games that people were playing, the risks people were taking, what people truly believed about their lives and what they were doing compared to, you know, what they were telling others, and what that what ends that was serving. I wonder how people feel now about the theories I've had on it being such a long-term premeditated crime, being premeditated well before they left Indiana versus some sort of rage event, or, how they feel now that after all those theories were made, they discovered DNA that was on the Range Rover and bike. If it's true that Suzanne would normally drive somewhere before going cycling, why would she want Barry to take the bicycle and the helmet out of the car for her? Bicycles are tricky to get out of boots, I can tell you that right now. They're all, if it's not mounted on a rack on the back, they're awkward. I can see a person asking someone to help them get the bike out in preparation for a cycle. Or does that just play into this Machiavellian plan of this macho doofus who had to have the bike set as a scene inside the garage? Or did that just mean that someone who doesn't know she also had a camelback, also had whatever other biking gear, and set them up with something to be able to take the bike and the helmet, not realizing they weren't doing it right, even though they'd looked in the car? You wouldn't necessarily understand what you're looking at with a camelback or the importance of it, when you're hurrying to make something look a certain way, right? So there's a lot to consider here, because it's so frustrating. I mean, everything can be explained so many different ways. So many people might be telling the truth or lying. We know for a fact Suzanne was glib and good at lying, and she was manipulating her friends because she wasn't coming clean, because she was using these incidences of where she'd been driving Barry crazy thinking she's having an affair, which she was doing. She was having the affair, denying it adamantly to him and to her friend, and accusing her husband of it. What do you think about the searches on his phone? Because she could have gotten hold of his phone. Anyone could have done those searches for, getting to third base. I mean, this sounds like a 16-year-old boy, doesn't it? And it's not like there wasn't one of those around. Getting to third base, making a girl come. Who knows? And they wouldn't have wanted to use their own phone, would they? So I don't know. It could all be part of the setup that someone was performing for a reason, nothing to do with something else and something else, if you know what I mean. There's a lot of little shows within a show going on here. Anywho, so Brian Laundrie hasn't been found. Do you think the FBI are complete idiots and are looking in the wrong place, or they're looking just because there is a chance that he's in this big park and they're obliged to look there? I mean, I question whether they even set eyes on Brian. And it has to make you wonder, when a young girl has been missing for such an extended period of time as Gabby, weeks, and her parents are trying to find her, and the person last with her was Brian Laundrie, why is it okay for the police not to even lay eyes on him, right? I understand the right to silence and everything, but surely there's a missing persons case, and it changes things, doesn't it? It should do. I wonder if he was just told, if police were told, oh, he's in his room, he's taking the oath of silence, he's taking the fifth, I don't think they even saw him, and I think that he's on one of the family's 3 boats, and he's just somewhere with his parents, hiding him, helping him hide. Now, we've had more sightings. Of course, there was the red, white, and Bethune on the 27th. This was at 6 p.m. So I guess the sighting at the cafe could be true. There was a sighting at a cafe on the 27th of both Gabby and Brian. They were arguing again, and there seemed to be some kerfuffle, and Gabby apologized to the cafe staff for Brian. And, you know, maybe he got served water in a little plastic tumbler. Maybe his lettuce had been washed. It wasn't organic enough for him. You know, maybe they didn't have local bison that they'd hunted with a spear gun themselves on the menu, and little Brian was disappointed. Who knows? But if this sighting was right, then I really can't believe the girl that came out then and said, yes, she drove past him slowly on the 26th. She was going to invite him to come and sit with her friends, but on hindsight, he was too young and creepy looking, because I don't think he's parked there on the 26th with Gabby, gone out, and they've parked in exactly the same spot on the 27th. I would tend to think they've been at the cafe on the 27th. This incident has happened, and he's gone and parked the van there with Gabby on the 27th. Maybe she was still alive when the Bethunes filmed the van. Maybe not. But certainly on the 28th, giving him 13 hours time to hitch to or walk to back to where he was sighted on the 29th, where he could have had a shower in the ablution blocks that were nearby, to where Miranda says she was interacting with him and gave him a ride for a brief amount of time, brief amount of mileage. Yeah, so it's one or the other, I think, the cafe or the 26th sighting. It's possible they were there on the 26th. Yeah. Yeah, this guy. Wow. What a nightmare. What a righteous little entitled nightmare. So I hope the police catch him. I understand there is a possibility he's in the park, that he's dead in the park, that he's alive hiding in the park. But I personally think he's nowhere near that park and hasn't been there. I think that the fact his parents own boats, they're in Florida, they're near the water. I think they've packed him up with some supplies. Maybe he's tried to go away. Maybe he's just hiding in the harbour or the bay there somewhere. Maybe he's going to take his own life out there, or already has. I don't know. It's not true when people say narcissists don't kill themselves. This is 100% not true. Under these sort of extreme situations, under this extreme stress, they are highly likely, you know, the statistic rises for them to commit suicide. It's not, your thinking isn't correct if you say, oh, that it's all about them. They would never, you know, exactly one of the reasons why they can do it, and they do it. So suicide's an option for Brian, being hidden by his parents. I'm not sure that, I was just thinking about his sister, I'm not sure that she knows anything in particular, but I'm pretty sure she was told to go out there and make the statement. Yeah. So we're waiting for the autopsy. You know, we've got the 3-ring circus over in Tennessee with the sociopaths Don and Candace. I mean, what is going on? I mean, you really want to have faith in law enforcement, right? But it's so bad that you think, wow, this does bring in the conspiratorial thought. It brings in the conspiratorial thought that we've got the police forces that they want us to have. Yeah, so you've got these two little adopted West boys disappear off the face of the earth. There's no proof of life for a year. We're not given this to this day. The police are like, yeah, nothing to see here, move along. Parents aren't saying anything. And, yeah, it's okay. Don't look. Then you've got, little summer whales. Where are the announcements about this little girl? Why are the parents allowed to carry on the way that they do? What an absolute shit show. But yeah, nothing to see there either. Nothing to see there. Move along. Yeah, we're going to pull Gabby and Brian up on the side of the road. Erratic behaviour. We're not going to give him a ticket. We're not going to give him a ticket. We're not going to put her in a jail cell where she might actually get some distance and be able to be spoken with and understood a little while we sort of try and piece together what's going on, because, young couple out there in the wilderness, there's vulnerabilities there. No, we're not going to do that. I'm going to relate as a macho male to Brian because, my ex-wife, same thing. She used to cause such scenes. She's completely loco. I know what these little dears are like. Don't you worry, Brian. Let's put you up in a nice hotel. We can have a hot shower. She can go and find one with the hobos. Yeah. You got to wonder about that. You got to wonder about those interactions and why they didn't react in a certain way when Brian laughed when he was told about the hotel and when he was told that they believed he was the victim. Now, I understand that the word of the law is, if it's determined by the officers that Gabby is the aggressor, domestic violence acts have happened, Brian's got marks on his face, well, follow through, and they didn't. You have to wonder what sort of discretion they're using, right? If they're allowed to use discretion. I mean, either something is law or not. Anyway, so we've got that, and then we've got police investigating a missing girl. She's been out in the wilderness with this young man. He's not saying anything. They haven't talked to her parents to say, hey, is Gabby all right? Have you heard from her? We haven't. Brian hasn't. Or, there's been no communication, and it's been days, and the police are investigating her as a missing person, and he's allowed to not even come out of his room like the little twerp he is. These man-child syndrome fuckwits again, going around wiping out life. Now, I'm not on the side of a lot of people glorifying Gabby as this angel Gabrielle and how she's so vivacious and everything, because she wasn't vivacious. She was kind of, I feel like I'd be kind of having to pull something from her all the time, and, I don't know. But I think she was a lovely, fun, sweet person who did connect with her friend Rose, for example. They had a good connection. Do I think she had the charisma to make van life? No, but she had the right to live, for one thing, live her life, to give it a go. And who knows what could have become out of this, see? Because this is part of her right to make her way, to find out who she is, to choose what she's going to do. And van life, probably wasn't going to work out. I mean, this was an exercise in social media and, and vlogging and editing and communicating and growing a following. It wasn't, she's not like, is it Hannah Lee Bell? All these, Lee. Hannah Lee Bell, who does live in the wilderness, who does kit her van out so that she can support herself there. I mean, we know the weakness of Brian and Gabby as far as being independent because they were spending too much money on hotels. They were staying in hotels, not in the van that had a bed. Okay. Why were they spending money on hotels? Okay. They weren't at that place in life, at that confident place in life. And I think there's a lot of self-esteem issues in Gabby, and I think Brian shot her down more and more and more. We've got no esteem, even though you hate what's happening in the relationship and it's violent and it's mean. You're so frightened that it might end. That feeling of being alone is debilitating. Okay, and I think this is a bit of what Gabby was going through, right? She may have made it as a van lifer, just as a vlogger. She may not have. It's not anything that should be up for debate or discussion, whether she's likable or not, or whether, even whether Brian is unlikable or not, which he's not. I mean, I think the reason why they couldn't make it as a couple in New York and decided to go to Florida is because Gabby just couldn't live life with Brian there and have friends, because she was mocked for it. They knew what a creep Brian is, and they didn't want her with him, and they wouldn't respect him. They probably didn't want to hang out, and the hangout times probably weren't very good, and Brian probably put a bit of a dark shadow over everything, and he's just such a bloody, he's holier than thou, better than thou, isn't he? When he's really nothing. He's like these first year sociology students or whatever, the first year, or human rights, they've done a human rights semester at university, and now, they know it all, right? So, I just see in Brian a whole heap of virtue signaling, and he never turned it off. Okay, so he didn't have a lot of self-awareness. And I think Gabby didn't have a lot of self-esteem. And they were a terrible blend. Yeah. Gabby wanted to give it a go, and why not? But she was frightened of what she was doing, and maybe not prepared physically and mentally for the type of trip, and to have to rely on Brian. I mean, indeed, if they'd broken off their engagement, they still wanted to be together on this trip. She needed him. She needed him for security and safety and to drive the van. So maybe she probably wasn't as prepared as she should have been to go and do it. And another year in her life might have made all the difference if she had separated from Brian, lived a year of life, and then gone. But she wasn't independent down in Florida because she was working, I would guess, for Brian's parents. She said she worked in a juice bar. They were in the juicing industry. I'd say that's it. I think I'm going to run out of time here. So, they were an accident waiting to happen, whether it was just a blown up relationship and they all go home with their heads hanging. You don't really think murder's going to happen, but this was the perfect setting, wasn't it? It was the perfect storm for what's happened, sadly. And there's probably so many times when intervention, those sliding door moments, right? Yeah. Anyway, so I'll go and I'll speak to you soon. I really apologize for how scattered and everything this is. I can't take painkillers because of my kidney. I'm at the stage where I can't keep taking painkillers for like fibro and migraines and things like that. Suzanne was trying CBD oil, and possibly this is the route that I'm going to take now. If anyone knows anything about that, you're welcome to chat with me about that, or just give me some information anyway down below about your experience. I'll speak to you soon.